So you've been asked to write an op-ed piece, but you may not be exactly sure what that is. So I'm just going to go through a couple of pointers. Op-ed got its name because of its position in a physical print newspaper. It is typically opposite the editorial, which is where it gets its name. Now, people will argue with you, but that is how it got its name. So a newspaper has an opinion section. It's much easier to find in print than it is to figure out what is opinion and what isn't in the online version. In this New York Times, this is the table of contents. It's going to give you the breakdown of what articles are where. The opinion section of the New York Times tends to be on the inside of the last page of the front section. So there's your front section. And if you flip it over, you'll see that there's generally a really big, high-priced, full-page ad right there. Yep, that's it. And then if you flip it over, you'll see that this page is actually broken into 3 sections. One is the editorial. That's those 2 columns on the left. And that's written by the editorial board, and it represents the position of the newspaper. Next to that are the letters to the editor, written in by the public and submitted and chosen by the editorial board. And then is the op-ed page. And that's the one that's opposite the editorial page. Not opinion editorial, opposite the editorial. There is usually a fairly set schedule. It's not necessarily permanent. People can guest post to the op-ed section of a newspaper. This is a schedule for the Times. This is a schedule for the Wall Street Journal. But like I said, guest writers can send in their columns. There are many distinctions between the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. I'm only going to highlight this one because it comes up a lot in our learning community at New Canaan. One of the reasons I'm going to talk about paywalls is because the Wall Street Journal in particular is known for you see a title of an article, it is there, you click on it, and this is what comes up. So they tend to, and not always, but they tend to put the vast majority of their journalistic content, not their opinion stuff, but their journalistic content behind the paywall, which means that if you click on the article, it'll give you like a paragraph or 2, and you click on the article and it will ask you to subscribe. And if you subscribe, as you can see in the top right-hand corner, I'm logged in, you can get full access to the Wall Street Journal online. But if you do not, you will mostly get opinion articles from a publication that is primarily behind a paywall. Now, you can circumvent that because we at New Canaan High School have subscription to a database of just national newspapers, and that does include the Wall Street Journal. So you can always get a Wall Street Journal article for free, so long as you are a library patron at New Canaan High School Library. And you can see in this list of databases, there it is. So one of the questions that comes up is, is opinion undesirable in a source for research? Whether or not you're doing a research project on op-ed writing or not. And the answer is really contingent upon what it is that you're researching. So, for example, Peggy Noonan, who has a specialty in basically Washington politics, if your thesis statement is about Washington politics, then you should definitely weigh in on her opinion on that one thing. Tom Friedman, who is an op-ed writer for the New York Times, has specialty in basically the Middle East, global economy, and also Washington politics. So if your thesis statement is about Syrian refugees, then yes, you would definitely go to Tom Friedman. So I do want to highlight a couple of differences between op-ed and a blog. This was my source on this, was this article by Marianne Lombardo, but I've looked at a number of them, and basically it can sort of be gelled down in distilled down into these subtle distinctions. An op-ed column is more structured, a little bit more formal. It's less conversational, although lately I have to say that I've seen some huge shifts in that. It tends to be on a fixed deadline, usually weekly or monthly, or even bi-weekly in some cases. And the length is usually fixed, either 300 words, 600 words, 1,200 words, or whatever. A blog, you will find that it's more conversational. You'll find contractions and idioms or cliches. You'll find a lot of slang. You'll find superlatives. First-person narrative is very common, although I have to say, increasingly, I'm finding a lot of blurring between the stylistic differences between blogs and op-ed columns. But you will still find a difference in schedule and length. Blogs, people write their blogs when they feel like it, and they can write them as short or as long as they want. And you will find more photo and video in blogs than you will in a column, because there is only a set amount of basically print newspaper space, real estate in a print newspaper, than there is in a blog. In a blog, you can be very flexible with photos. So those are two things. I do want to share this one crazy story, because this article appeared on March 30th of this year. Headline, college admission shocker, cementing its standing as the most selective institution of higher education in the country. Stanford University announced this week that it had once again received record-setting number of applications, and that its acceptance rate plummeted all the way down to its inevitable conclusion of 0%. So this was satire, and nowhere in the paper did it have a disclaimer. Yes, it was on the op-ed column by Frank Bruni, who's not necessarily known for his satire, but is definitely known for his berating of college acceptance rates, that they all pride themselves on boasting that they have a lower acceptance rates than one another. So that article came out, and the amazing part is how many people were fooled by it. So, including an anchor at WABC in Los Angeles, but actually there was a great deal of confusion among the accepted students' parents and the accepted students themselves. So this was not the only article I've seen on this. There have been plenty, but I actually did get notification from a teacher that I knew who sent a saying, "Can you believe the story about Stanford?" And my sister had a little bit of trouble like wrapping her head around it, and she worked at Stanford. So it was a very well crafted satire piece, but it definitely fooled the people. And so one of the things you need to be mindful of is that not everything you read in an op-ed column is going to be true. Definitely be critical in your reading of these kinds of journalistic resources.